In the shadowy corridors of literary history, certain tales carry more than mere entertainment. They bear the weight of ancient knowledge, occult wisdom, and forbidden truths that their creators dared not speak openly. What appears as innocent folklore often conceals darker purposes, and few stories demonstrate this more chillingly than the tale known as Sleeping Beauty. But first, don't miss out. Subscribe for regular doses of the unexplained. The winter of 1696 found Charles Perrault, a respected member of the French Academy, laboring over manuscripts in his study overlooking the Seine. The 58-year-old scholar had already established himself as a formidable intellectual, yet his newest work would prove far more significant than anyone could have imagined. As snow blanketed Paris, Perrault was completing his collection Histoires sous contes du temps passé, tales that would endure for centuries. Among these stories lay one that would become known as La Belle aux Bois Dormants, the beauty sleeping in the wood. Yet recently discovered correspondence between Perrault and members of the Rosicrucian order suggests this tale was far more than children's entertainment. The letters found in a sealed chamber beneath the Abbey of Saint-Germain-des-Prés reveal Perrault's deep involvement with esoteric societies that viewed storytelling as a method of preserving occult knowledge. The original version of Sleeping Beauty differs markedly from sanitized modern retellings. Perrault's princess falls into her cursed sleep not through accident but through what the text describes as the fulfillment of ancient prophecy. The spinning wheel that causes her downfall appears in the story with unsettling specificity. Constructed of blackened wood from trees that grew in cursed soil, its spindle crafted from metal that gleamed with unnatural light. Documentation from the period reveals that spinning wheels held profound significance in medieval witchcraft. The circular motion represented the wheel of fate, while the spindle symbolized the axis between worlds. Occult practitioners believed certain wheels could pierce the veil between dimensions, allowing communication with entities beyond human understanding. Perrault's detailed description of the cursed spinning wheel matches exactly the specifications found in grimoires of the era. The fairy who curses the princess presents another disturbing element. Unlike benevolent fairy godmothers of later adaptations, Perrault's antagonist possesses characteristics that align with descriptions of demonic entities in contemporary demonology texts. She appears as an ancient woman with eyes that held the depth of centuries and speaks in words that seem to echo from hollow places. Her curse specifically targets the princess's 15th birthday, a date that holds significance in occult numerology as representing the completion of one cycle and the dangerous transition to another. More unsettling still, the Brothers Grimm's later version, published in 1812, added elements that deepened the story's occult connections. Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm were not merely collectors of folklore, but serious scholars of Germanic mythology and esoteric traditions. Their academic backgrounds in philology and ancient languages provided them access to source materials that revealed the darker origins of European fairy tales. The Grimm version introduces the concept of the 100-year sleep, a time span that corresponds precisely to what medieval alchemists called the Great Work, the time required for spiritual transformation and the crossing between worlds. During this century of slumber, the princess exists in a state between life and death, consciousness and oblivion. Occult texts describe this liminal state as one in which the soul can commune with otherworldly forces. The thorny hedge that grows around the sleeping castle presents another layer of esoteric symbolism. In both versions, this barrier proves impenetrable to all but the destined prince. The thorns are described as alive with malevolent purpose, growing thicker and more twisted with each passing year. Medieval grimoires speak of similar barriers created through ritual magic designed to protect sacred spaces from uninitiated intrusion. Archaeological evidence supports the possibility that such practices existed. Excavations at sites associated with medieval occult activity have revealed elaborate thorn gardens, their patterns corresponding to magical circles and protective symbols. The arrangement of these plantings follows specific geometric principles that appear in both alchemical texts and the detailed descriptions found in various versions of Sleeping Beauty. The prince's role in breaking the curse carries its own disturbing implications. In Perrault's original telling, he awakens the princess not through a kiss, but through what the text describes as the completion of destiny's design. The prince arrives exactly 100 years after the curse takes effect, suggesting his appearance was predetermined rather than coincidental. Medieval occult practices often involved elaborate rituals timed to specific astronomical events, and the prince's arrival corresponds to what astrologers of the period called the return of the stellar configuration. More troubling still, recently discovered marginalia in Perrault's personal copy of his tales reveals additional details that never appeared in published versions. These handwritten notes describe the princess's awakening as accompanied by phenomena that defied natural explanation. The castle's inhabitants who had slept alongside her awakened with knowledge they had not possessed before their enchantment. Servants spoke of distant lands they had never visited, while courtiers displayed skills in languages that did not exist when they fell asleep. The marginalia also references the Watchers, entities that observed the sleeping castle throughout the 100 years. These beings, described as neither fully corporeal nor entirely spirit, maintained vigil over the cursed inhabitants. Their presence ensured that the magical working remained undisturbed, but their true nature and purpose remained deliberately obscured in Perrault's notes. Documentation from the Grimm brothers' research reveals similar disturbing elements. Letters between Jacob Grimm and scholars of Germanic mythology discuss the true purpose of the Sleeping Maiden tales, suggesting these stories served as coded instructions for occult practitioners. The letters reference the old religion and describe fairy tales as vehicles for preserving knowledge that would otherwise be lost to religious persecution. One particularly chilling letter, dated 1814, describes Jacob Grimm's encounter with an elderly woman in the Black Forest who claimed direct knowledge of the Sleeping Beauty story's origins. This woman, identified only as the keeper of old ways, reportedly told Grimm that the tale described an actual ritual performed by medieval practitioners. The ritual involved inducing a death-like trance in a chosen subject, maintaining this state through supernatural means, and using the subject as a conduit for communication with otherworldly entities. The woman's account, preserved in Grimm's private journals, describes the ritual's true purpose as the opening of the way between worlds. The sleeping maiden served as an anchor point, her suspended consciousness allowing initiated practitioners to journey into realms beyond normal human perception. The 100-year duration was necessary to complete what she termed the Great Working, a process that would fundamentally alter the nature of reality itself. Physical evidence supporting these claims emerged in 1937 during excavations near Marburg, where the Grimm brothers had conducted much of their research. Workers discovered a medieval chamber containing artifacts that matched descriptions from the Sleeping Beauty tale with disturbing accuracy. Among these items was a spinning wheel constructed exactly as Perrault had described, its wood blackened with age and its metal components bearing symbols that corresponded to known occult marking. More unsettling still, the chamber contained the remains of a young woman arranged in a position that suggested ritualistic placement. Carbon dating indicated the remains were approximately 800 years old, placing them in the same historical period that scholars believe gave rise to the original Sleeping Beauty legend. The woman's skeletal structure showed no signs of trauma or disease, yet her bones displayed an unusual crystalline quality that defied explanation. The discovery was quickly classified by German authorities, and the excavation site was sealed. The few researchers who examined the remains before the site's closure reported additional anomalies that challenged conventional understanding. The woman's remains showed signs of preservation that should have been impossible given the burial conditions, while the surrounding soil contained mineral compositions that did not match the local geology. Perhaps most disturbing of all, the sealed chamber contained written materials that appear to be instructions for performing the ritual described in the Sleeping Beauty tale. These documents, written in a mixture of Latin and Germanic dialects, provided detailed procedures for inducing the death-like trance, maintaining the subject's suspended state, and utilizing their consciousness as a bridge between worlds. The instructions referenced specific astronomical alignments and seasonal timings that matched the symbolic elements found in both Perrault's and the Grimm brothers' versions of the tale. The 100-year duration was revealed as the time required for particular stellar configurations to return, creating the optimal conditions for what the documents termed the Great Awakening. Modern analysis of these documents has revealed additional layers of meaning that suggest the Sleeping Beauty tale served multiple purposes within occult tradition. Beyond its function as a ritual guide, the story appears to have been a form of encoded communication between practitioners, allowing them to share knowledge while avoiding detection by religious authorities who viewed such practices as heretical. The tale's enduring popularity and its consistent elements across different cultures and time periods suggest something more than coincidental storytelling. Versions of the Sleeping Maiden narrative appear in folklore traditions throughout Europe, each containing core elements that remain remarkably consistent despite geographical and temporal separation. This consistency implies a common source or shared knowledge base that transcends normal cultural transmission. Recent scholarship has identified similar patterns in other fairy tales, suggesting that many beloved stories may have originated as vehicles for preserving occult knowledge. The Sleeping Beauty tale, however, stands apart due to the wealth of documentary evidence supporting its esoteric origins and the physical artifacts that corroborate its ritual application. The implications of these discoveries extend far beyond literary history. If the evidence is accurate, then generations of children have been exposed to coded instructions for occult practices embedded within seemingly innocent entertainment. The psychological impact of repeated exposure to such symbolism remains unknown, but researchers in related fields have noted correlations between fairy tale exposure and reported paranormal experiences. What do you think really happened in that sealed chamber beneath Marburg? Was it evidence of an actual occult ritual or something far more disturbing? Share your thoughts in the comments below and subscribe to explore more cases where innocent stories conceal darker truths.